Good afternoon. This is Jason Dean from Film Fanatic. So, hope everyone's doing good. It's another nice day here in Midcoast, Maine. It's Tuesday around 12:30, and so yeah, I'm back at it again, making another video. So, yeah, can't believe it's almost September already. So it's kind of ridiculous, but the weather's still nice. Hopefully, this will last for a while. So, yeah, I've been trying to keep a schedule more or less with these videos because I notice it's been helping get some more people involved with checking out the videos and stuff. The more you know content, and hopefully the better the quality of the content is, due to a little bit of a better setup now, that that will just keep increasing traffic and people checking out the videos and stuff. So yeah, I really appreciate everyone's support, and it's been really fun, a real fun learning experience, this whole thing. And again, the whole YouTube thing is a whole new thing for me. So yeah, I'm kind of on the schedule with doing videos, just about every day, or every other day, or whenever I can squeeze them in. And you know it's like I had said before, it's now the last month or so, it's been a lot easier for me to make videos, as far as the setup goes and the timing and stuff with my schedule, and all that other good stuff. So, yeah, I guess first off, I'll talk about some other things that were going on. So, or music related stuff with Quantum. I want to give a big thanks and shout out to AC Davis. We played, well, it was kind of a private party, semi private party, but it was open enough to where people could, who were going to the party, could invite people. So there was uh, there was a festival on Sunday that we played at as Quantum, and it was at AC Davis's house, who lives in Owl's Head. And boy, what an amazing spot it was. I didn't know what to expect. I knew the way he had described it as being, like a festival. He had a stage set up, and then he had it all, like, all backline. Uh, he had a sound system all backline ready to go. He had drums and amps and microphones, monitors. I mean, he had a really amazing setup. He had lights, and they had this whole, they had a food truck. The food was really pretty spectacular, and it was a pretty seriously cool. It was definitely a highlight, I felt like, for the summer. We were asked to do it. He's AC's done this festival for a few years now. I think he's done it maybe 3 years or so in a row, and we weren't able to do it. He had asked us once or twice to do it before, and we weren't able to do it because of previous commitments. And we almost weren't able to do it this year because originally there was a little bit of confusion about when the show was, and he had told me originally it was going to be in September, but then a few days actually before the show, he said actually it's this month. He had made a mistake, and that it was this past Sunday. So, and one of the problems that I had is I had a show, a gig booked already that day with the Whitehead Dean group, that was basically at the same time that he had a scheduled at the festival. And it was, right at Lulu's at Rockland, in Rockland, where we play a lot of gigs at. And it's super, our favorite venue to play for both bands, for both the jazz group and Quantum. And we so he was, luckily he was very flexible, and he's like, well, it's only like a 10-minute drive. So I said, well, we get done at 6, and we can, pack our stuff up, and then we'll go over, and since there's not a situation where we have to set up our own PA, we can, it'll be, pretty easy as far as setting up, and we just kind of, get our immediate equipment that we need and plugins, and then we can just, go for it. So that's what we did. We ended up finishing our gig at 6, and then we, raced over to AC's place. And what an amazing spot. I mean, it's right on the water, literally, like right on the peninsula, and just a breathtaking place. and the sound system was pretty amazing. And there was a lot of people there. Considering we were the last band, and considering that there was the festival had been going since like 1 o'clock, so there had been I think you had 5 or 6 bands that played. So we were the last band, and so there was music going all day long. And I was surprised that like people actually stayed and hung out. And then after we got done playing, we there was like a kind of an open mic kind of scenario where everybody just kind of jammed and stuff. But wicked cool event, and I really thank AC uh, for putting it all together. And he had a really great budget. He paid all the bands really really well, and we played, I don't know, maybe 45-minute set or so, 45 to 50 minutes, but it was felt like it went pretty well, and got some good responses. And we you know talked about doing something like that in the spring or in the future, something, another event like that, because I feel like this event is it was way better than I expected, and I thought it would be pretty cool, but not like uh, as well run as it was, and as organized as it was. It was great, and so it was very cool. So yeah, so, and I think there was like a video. They recorded all the audio and video of the show and of the whole party and of all the bands. So stay tuned. There could be some good video and audio coming up of the show. And whenever I get a hold of that, and if it's pretty good quality, I'll be posting it and stuff. So yeah, it's pretty exciting. The other thing I'm gonna do for Quantum is I'm gonna be setting up a separate Facebook page for just Quantum and Berenice Records. On the behind the scenes, and behind the scenes of the band and the record label, it's been a little chaotic, and unfortunately, our website has been down for the last probably 7 months, and it's now basically obsolete. Our Berenice Records website. And what had happened was my web designer, Al Author, who was a really great guy, really smart, had so many great ideas, super helpful. He passed away late last year. So what had ended up happening was he kept all the passwords and all of the codes to basically access the site. So his job, the job that I paid him for, was to basically build the site. And after that was done, he would upload updates. Basically, I would send him an email, and with if I had new happenings, as far as if Quantum had new dates for gigs coming up or news with the album and all those kinds of things, he would post all that stuff, and he ran a website. But unfortunately, when he passed, there was no way of accessing any of those codes to retrieve it and basically keep the site alive. So we tried and tried to work on it for probably a couple of months, and to no avail. We came up pretty short. So unfortunately, the website is down, and the website had all of our albums. We have we have there was our first. There was actually quite a few releases on it when I first started Berenice Records. Well, going back a little bit before that, I always was really interested and fascinated by real small independent companies where it was more or less a collective, but basically where the artists could control and release their product, and hopefully be able to make a product, and make a profit off of their product, and also have it where it was a really small but contained machine that could still function and have like some legitimacy and actually put out product, and through distribution, through streaming, through pressing records, CDs, what have you, whatever physical things that were available along with streaming. So it was a long time ago when one particular situation that really inspired it. There's this really great director and also a producer who is pretty well known. He's pretty underground, but he's pretty well known. Larry Fenderson, and he's made some really great movies. He's produced a lot of really great movies, and he's known for doing lots of really great kind of underground, low budget horror films. And he had started Glass Eye Pictures or Glass Eye Pix quite a few years ago, maybe 20 years ago. And the first time I ever heard of Larry Fenderson was as a director, and he made this incredible vampire movie that was it left such an impression on me, and it really was an inspiring movie. And plus, too, he he was a total like do it yourself kind of guy. He made he basically made his own movies. He made his own productions. He basically was a totally self-contained artist, and he was a real big inspiration. And when when I first saw his movie, and his movie was called Habit, and it came out in the '90s. It's a pretty old school movie. It's a vampire movie, and it deals with like subjects of like addiction problems. And I was just totally blown away by it. It's super low budget and incredible. But around that time, he also started Glass Eye Pix, which was his own company, like his own basically self-contained independent film company. And he started releasing a lot of his movies through that. And then he would also direct movies, but then he also started producing other uh, other films. And one of the most well-known directors that he's worked with, and he still works with, actually just recently, is another director called Ty West, who's a very talented horror, like modern horror director. Recently, he just came out with a movie which I easily think was one of the best movies as far as new horror films that came out last year, called X. I did a show on Film Fanatic. I did a little review, and I did a little video review of this movie, and tremendous movie. Definitely one of the best horror films that's come out. So I followed Larry Fenderson's career for quite a while, but I remember seeing many interviews with him about how he, was kind of getting shut down by big Hollywood. A lot of people were not really into his kind of weird, quirky underground ideas as far as what he wanted to do as a filmmaker. So he basically took it upon himself to just try to create that reality. Real small, super low budget indie films, but he became this real big success. Totally self-contained, self-financed. He put his own money into it, and it was a really inspiring thing. And I had always been fascinated by people that could do that and pull that off in the face of, say, extreme adversity. For artists that are getting maybe shut down by the corporate giants. So I always was like, how does somebody, what does somebody do who has some kind of vision and has some integrity about things, but is also pragmatic? What does that person or artist do in the face of that and that kind of adversity? So Larry Fenderson for me was that guy, and he was that inspiration. So that's when I decided to basically start my own more or less record label. So we started off with that we started Berenice Records about close to 8 years ago now. It's hard to believe, but 7 years ago. And we basically looked at it as a thing of where, it's a very small potatoes kind of operation, but we looked at it as an apparatus that we could write, record, and release our own music and have like total control over what we do and what we want to do, and also hopefully be able to make some kind of profit off of that, and where we would have a little bit of distribution, and also have things on a digital platform, or the various digital platforms, but then also have physical copies of, CDs and records. So we had our launch party, and I did a rock like EP. I had this one project, like a one-off project of electronic inspired rock music, and we did a self-release album, like an album launch party with that, and it was an EP, and that was the initial first release for Berenice Records, and it was just a launch party, and then the website was up and everything was kind of going, and the other thing that was really great was, and it's also a partnership with my great friend Mike Whitehead, who I've been friends with for a very very long time, and I've also have many years of playing music with him in various different groups and stuff, and he's definitely you know one of my best friends easily, and so we had this whole idea of, he had just, a few years before we had this concept, we he had just basically, he had a lot of experience recording music and working in studios and recording his own music. So his goal, and one of his things he always wanted to do, was to build his own recording studio. So during that time, he built his own recording studio in Thomason. So we partnered up with this idea that we could, you know, basically record everything, put all our music up, and then we were also self-contained enough that we could do the duplications. We could, master our own albums, and then we could, you know, run off copies of like physical, like say CDs or albums. We could, you know, we could do everything ourselves with like no overhead financially, because that's a big thing for bands and artists is, if you have a budget and you're going into a studio, that can really kill a band, or really put a big strain on a band, on as far as their limitations. And technology has grown so much now since then that people can record albums in their house with a laptop. But this was, when we had this idea and kind of put it into reality, it was kind of at the cusp of that. It was kind of before that was actually happening, and things have changed so much since then. So we were able to be pretty self-contained. So we released our first debut album, which was like basically a self-titled, Jason Dean rock album, EP. And then after that, we shortly after that, we had put together the Quantum Band, and then we released our first Quantum album through that, which was self-titled, and then our second album after that, which was Digital Palace, and then we started working a little bit with other artists, and one artist that we had worked with was Darren Deicide, and we worked with him for a couple of years. We had played a lot of shows together at one point, both of our bands, but we also released one of his albums through our website and through our record label, Berenice Records, and it was our first time pressing vinyl, and we had a bunch of vinyl records pressed, about 400 or 500 records, and he went on tour, and then he went over to Europe and did a bunch of international dates. So, and then after that, as Quantum, we released our third album, which was The Stars Beneath Our Feet. And then just this past June, we released our fourth album, In Dreams I Saw Chapter 1. And that's a two-part album, and we recorded both albums at the same time, but we released the first album this past June. And it's been a really great experience, trying to run a tiny little small potato record label in, these really challenging times. But it's something that's I feel like we're able to do, and it's really self-contained, and we can make all the decisions that we really want, and feel pretty comfortable with making those decisions, and then we can kind of stand by them. And it's been a really great, rewarding experience. So in light of the website that we had built years ago and all of those things, we basically, the website is obsolete, So I'm going to be starting. I have a Berenice Records Facebook page. That's all we really have as far as web presence. But and we have our music now on Bandcamp under Quantum, and there's going to be all of our other studio albums will eventually be on there also. And I'm going to be starting a Facebook page that's just for the Quantum and also Berenice Records. But it's going to be mainly focused on our band Quantum, so that will be, that'll be a fun thing. So look out for that. So this brings me to the movies that I'm going to be discussing today. I was super excited about talking about this. And again, it's like one of those things where I, this is a collection of movies that have been talked about for many, many years. And there's been all kinds of reviews and very, very, it's a very well-known movie franchise. And that's the Friday the 13th franchise. I got this probably 2 years ago, and this is like the complete. It's short. It doesn't have a couple of the movies, but it's basically the entire collection of the Friday the 13th franchise. And again, like I did a show recently on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and that's another movie that is a real cherished movie for me. But on the other side of the spectrum, it's a movie that's been talked about to a point to death and discussed because it's such a huge movie. So I was kind of like, maybe I shouldn't. What else can I add to that? I mostly spend the time with what I do with Film Fanatic, trying to talk about movies that are a lot less well known or underground. So to kind of maybe bring some light to films that, if you like these films or Texas, movies that are kind of similar to that or that were inspired, you might want to check out. But at the end of the day, Texas, that movie, like I said, is such a beloved movie of mine, and for me, being a collector of movies, and hugely inspirational. And so I decided I got to do a show on Friday the 13th because this is a movie that, and franchise that I literally grew up on. It's an iconic Jason Voorhees, the hockey mask killer. I mean, it's such an iconic image and character. You know, he's a household name, just like Freddy Krueger would be, Leatherface, Pinhead, and Michael Myers, and Jason Voorhees, of course, from Friday the 13th. So, and I just started watching. I've seen all of these movies like a bazillion times, but I was really excited about getting this whole box set. It's short, two of the movies. The two movies it doesn't have on it is the Jason X, or Jason in Space, and I think there's Jason Goes to Hell isn't on here. And then the newer one that came out about, well, it's not newer anymore, but it came out about 10 years ago, or maybe a little less. That one, which was kind of the revamp or the reboot, which I actually really like, that one is not included on here. But all of the other ones are. And, and last night I just started watching this whole set. I'm going to watch it, get all the way through it again this week. And it's great. It's, such a classic movie, and particularly the first one. My favorite two films of the entire franchise is definitely like the first one, and then also Chapter 3. Chapter 3 stars Ted White, who plays Jason Voorhees. And like there's been many numerous actors who've played Jason Voorhees, the iconic, monster, throughout the years. And so, but Ted White, I would say, is probably my favorite, just because of his ferocity and his intensity on screen. He's like, a really menacing killer on the big screen, very intense. And Chapter 3 has always been my favorite one. Corey Haim, Corey Feldman, Corey Feldman. It's Crispin Glover. It's pure 80s crap, but it's just so amazing and so hilarious. And the kills are amazing. in Chapter 3 in particular. But I watched the original last night. And again, I've seen these movies a bazillion times, and it's a really great movie. Like, I feel like it has a lot of a lot of a lot of things from that for that movie. I feel were inspired by Alfred Hitchcock. It's got a real cool suspense level to it, and the kills are great. And I kind of feel it's to a degree a standalone film. The most well-known actor who played Jason Voorhees, Kane Hodder, he played. He probably has the biggest record as far as playing Jason Voorhees. I believe, he played him for like in 5 different films, and he's probably the most popular. For me, he's great, of course, but I, I'm more of a Ted White fan, and the interesting thing about watching these films, like, they're all great, and they're all like super fun and fantastic, and and they're super cheesy. They're I One thing I noticed watching this set now, they each movie progressively gets more has less of a violent content. They're not as gory, and it seemed like a lot of these films, as they went on, for whatever reasons, through distribution or whatever it was, they got a lot of a lot of these films got cut, and there was a lot of scenes cut from a lot of these films. So they're a little bit, even though they're still dark and very violent, they're definitely more sanitized than like the first two or three. And it's a funny thing. They get less and less gory as they go. They get a little bit more campy, but they do get a little bit less gory, and which is weird. And just I always found that really surprising. The revamp that came out, or the reboot one, that one I felt harkened back to the Ted White series, and where it was a lot more brutal and gory. And one of the other amazing things about these movies, especially the first one, was the legendary makeup artist Tom Savini. This was one of his first movies that he ever worked on for his career, and it really put him on the map. He did all the effects for the very first Friday the 13th, and also he did Chapter 3, the final chapter, which, again, like I said, is probably my favorite in the franchise. So he came back for to do his great, amazing work, and all of these great in camera gore slasher effects that were just phenomenal, and before the age of Tom Savini. And so, and if people following the news, there's been all this controversy because the whole franchise, they were supposedly they were going to keep making more of these films, but they were all marred down in all kinds of legal issues as far as moving the franchise. Creative rights were up in the air, and Sean Cunningham, who is the director, he basically was one of the co-writers and the director of the first one. Basically established a franchise. He was all he had been for like the last couple of years, kind of marred down in all of these legal battles, and supposedly now the the case has been settled. So there might be some more of these movies coming your way, and it's a pretty wild, it'd be a wild thing to see that if that actually happens. It was basically all of these legal battles because Sean Cunningham and Victor Miller were the two guys that basically were partners, and they created the Friday 13th franchise. And then the last couple of years, Victor Miller basically, sued Sean Cunningham for the creative rights. So it was marred down with all of, the franchise has been dead for a long time as far as them making new movies. And supposedly it was settled, and I think there's been an equal payment for both writers and directors. And supposedly now there's going to be another batch of these movies coming out. So that'll be really interesting to see. They're, but they're iconic movies, and again, I've seen them a bazillion times, and you know, literally these films were like movies of my youth, and this package is actually really great. I got this again at Bull Moose. Surprise, surprise. I got this. It has 8 movies. Has 8 of the movies in it, and it's a really amazing package. I got this used, which I couldn't believe, and it's got all the films, all kind of put together. They're all remastered on Blu-ray, and there's a couple of the first movie in particular, and Chapter 3, and a couple of the other movies are really packed with some really great special features. There's a lot of great interviews, really cool little interview with Sean Cunningham. There's a reunion. There's a cast reunion for the original film that's in here. That's actually really interesting and really cool, and they really get into the detail of how they were just so when they set out to make this movie. Sean Cunningham and Victor Miller, before they got into making slasher films, they were essentially they were partners, and they were making these kids movies, and they were but they weren't making any money. They were not able to break into Hollywood. And around that time, John Carpenter had just released Halloween, and it became a huge hit, a real big commercial success for like a real low budget movie. So Sean Cunningham had approached his partner Victor Miller on the idea of like, for us to make some money and get us some legitimacy, why don't we try making a horror movie? So Halloween had just come out, and Victor Miller went to go see Halloween, and he basically saw the formula and understood the formula of how John Carpenter put together this movie and how he made it. So he basically stole the structure of Halloween, and they created the Friday the 13th movies from that. And initially they were just it was going to be a one-off movie, and it was just going to be that. They had no aspirations or ideas that it was going to turn into this major franchise, and actually one of the biggest franchises ever, and have this rabid fan base that's still like, it's still part of the American movie experience to this day. And they basically shot this movie for nothing, and they were so blown away by when the film came out, the magnitude and the success of it. And it was released through Paramount Studios. And after the major success, that's where they were approached to maybe turn this into a franchise, and turn it in, turn out this part 2, and then grow upon that, and then it legitimately turned this into a franchise. Because back then, you're talking like 80, 81, there really weren't any franchises, and now that's a thing. Like now, franchises are commonplace. You have movies like the Saw franchise, or like the Bourne Identity franchises, the Purge franchises. There's numerous. The Purge franchise, like I said, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I just talked about, another huge franchise. So this was during a time when that was, unheard of. So they decided to milk it and turn it into something. Probably one of the biggest ones is the Lord of the Rings franchise. But anyway, yeah. So this movie was way ahead of its time. It definitely inspired. It was definitely one of the first slasher films that actually had, a huge commercial success, and that inspired where there was a ton of other directors and filmmakers that tried to cash in on it and made all of these other films, and kind of gave birth to like the whole slasher film craze that came out in the 80s, which I love slasher films and all the exploitation films that came out. So yeah, highly, highly recommend checking out this set. If you're a fan of this franchise, it's pretty amazing, and it feels really complete. So again, thank you again. This is Jason Dean from Film Fanatic. If you get a chance, check out the page, check out the YouTube channel, and like and subscribe. And we will see you next time. Have a great day. Bye.